Uni? Okay, great. Because when we started the session, it said it will automatically record, but then, good, thank you, Annie. Then we will go on the breakouts rooms, and then later on we come back, and in the plenary we will discuss. So please, let's go to the first slide, the next slide. Yes. So one of our concerns, see, if we are talking about the division of management, spirituality, and religion, and it's very interesting to see three different disciplines trying to find the intersections and build up, you can say, knowledge, practices. But the important thing is, since we have been looking into different kinds of studies in the past, you can say the past 20 years, a lot of studies have been done on these intersections. What we feel is missing is that clear focus on spirituality. Because management, of course, if we look at spirituality from the lens of management, we have to depend on the management, general management principles, the theories, the methodologies that are already worked out in that context. If we look at religion, which is the other part, the other intersection, then religion is being influenced by different disciplines like anthropology, social studies, even some psychologists are bringing the link to religion. We have, of course, theologians working on it, religious studies. And so that becomes, and philosophy, usually people try also to link it to religious studies. So that is a different set of disciplines. So what we can do, we can position spirituality in the middle and say we are going to count on management. We are on the other hand, we are going to count on what methodologies, theories have been developed in religious studies or religious related studies. But then what I feel always is that there is some kind of tension, because when we see the kinds of debates popping up, that people would say that, you know, we should not follow up the traditional methodologies. That's not sufficient for us to work on the field of spirituality. So then in our reflections, we thought, then something is missing. So what is that? What is missing? You can't say, you know, those methodologies we are not bringing in while we are heavily relying on those fields. And at the same time, we don't have any alternatives that much, because we want to be also in that debate, which is happening in the mainstream. So in our reflections, we thought that actually spirituality needs an own place. Because if you see in the developments the past 20 to 30 years, it has been actually influencing different other disciplines in a way, or scholars from different disciplines have been showing interest for spirituality. But it's still always kind of, in a way, trying to get that space. But what we then notice is that it becomes, in a way, everyone's child. At the same time, when it comes to what it is and whether it has its own methodologies, its own theories, it becomes very difficult. So that's why in our reflections, we said that we see the shift from everyone's becoming or being everyone's baby to no one's baby. So spirituality deserves its own place. This is the thing that we are working on, you can say, the past 10 years or maybe longer. And then in that process, of course, we see different kinds of challenges coming up. So some of the challenges we will discuss. And therefore, if you want to talk about claiming spirituality as a different discipline or as its own discipline, then we have to, of course, start with what is it? So we start with the ontological perspective. And then one way is, since we have studied different definitions, we come up with what is it then at an abstract level where you can connect to different scholars, because it's not that you just say, you know, all the work of the past 20 years, it was just something we have to just take out and start from scratch. We are trying to see what is the common thing that we have seen in all these different works, and is there something at a conceptual level which connects, and therefore we come up with the concept of schemas in a way as a meta concept to connect to spiritual concepts. Next slide, please. So here I would like to invite Puneet. Will you take this?
Yeah, thank you. By the way, the points on the slides are just to warm up, on the topic, and not in any way comprehensive research on this problem. Is just to warm up on certain key points that we are observing. So we another paper that we are working on is that spirituality, disciplinarity of spirituality. In that. And just quickly bring up I will just take one or few slides in this paper. This paper we presented in the last AOM. So as Sharda mentioned, that there's been past a lot of research in spirituality, and we did some, and of course there are scholars right now also in the audience who have done bibliometric studies, and to bring home a point that there have been considerable research, and and this is the conclusion that we ended up with. And since after becoming a division, it is becoming important that we bring this to the fore. So these were some of the research that we have done on what are the arguments in favor of disciplinarity and interdisciplinarity, and how that affects spirituality. And so this is the definition that we arrived at for spirituality as a discipline. Of course, this definition is just a starting point, and it is open to arguments. So spirituality as a field of knowledge that deals with the unexperienceable and unknowable unknown, and its connectedness with the knowable and experienceable realm. It can be brought shorter also, of course, but this is just a way to begin the discourse in a fundamental way. So as any discipline, requires some essential characteristics. So we thought that every discipline must have its ontology, epistemology, axiology, and praxeology. So this workshop is mostly concerns ontology. In future, we will have workshops on epistemology, axiology, and praxeology. So today we will talk about the challenges in the spiritual concepts, defining them, and do we need to actually define what are the kind of arguments, so we can have a discussion around it. So the first aspect of the discipline that we are talking about here.
I would like to invite Ramya to say a few words about the ontology aspect of spirituality that goes beyond text, as we discussed.
Yeah. So when we talk about ontology, we usually ask us this question about what is our assumption of the reality? What is the fundamental assumption about the reality? So when Sharda started the session and she said if we can close our eyes and just connect with ourselves or connect with the rest of the universe and just go deep down, what was our feeling or thought or conceptualization of that spiritual moment? And possibly you cannot put it in text, right? Maybe you had some image in mind, or maybe you remembered a poem, or maybe you experienced a spiritual connection or some ancestral guidance, or you felt a deep feeling. It could be a range of things, and it is so different for each and every one of us as to what we experience when we talk about a spiritual experience or a spiritual moment. So maybe text or putting a word on top of it, or a phrase or an English language terminology on top of it might be limiting. So how can we conceptualize or imagine spirituality in non-text based ways? Maybe that will open up, that kind of an ontology might open up different epistemologies, and therefore also give way to newer research methods that we can think about for MSR, and that's also a subject matter of the next webinar that we may be planning on research methods for indigenous knowledge. Of course, indigenous knowledge also requires a pluralistic research methodology, which is goes back to newer ontologies and epistemologies. So that's where I think we are coming in from. Ontology, I mean, we really have to go beyond. It's not just the terminology and definition like Sharda is mentioning, but maybe it's non-text, it's text, it's everything, it's much bigger. So we have to possibly go back deep down and ask ourselves what our true experience of that reality is.
Good, thank you. I'd like to invite Puneet again for explaining the model that we have been developing, since it's linked to.
Yeah, since Ramya has thrown a challenge that shall we define or not define, and what are the realms we are talking about. So we're taking a step back on what phenomenon that are we talking about first. So let's see from an ontological perspective. So I'll just briefly share one or two. Sorry about that. I hope sorry, my screen is visible.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so we see that fundamentally, we are taking an analogy with mathematics as a discipline. So mathematics deals with numbers, and we have spirituality deals with something which may be beyond numbers, or may be overlapping with numbers, or maybe perhaps include numbers. So that's the start point fundamentally we are seeing, and we come up with this model or a depiction of what essentially, or essentially, not essentially, I will stop short in using the word essential. I will come that in a moment. So we are seeing this pull and push between science and spirituality, numbers and non-numbers realm, and taking these arguments further. I'm not going into details of it. We are breaking down the whole spectrum in this way, that we have the whole reality into four buckets. So whereas something which Ramya hinted at is something which is experienceable, or experienceable at the same time, unknowable and unknown, or it could be unexperienceable also. We only know the definitions for things like salvation, moksha, final emancipation. So those comes in something which is unexperienceable, unknowable, unknown, perhaps. So at least we have a placeholder or a place to put that concept in. So this is something we did on the ontology, and so this is also a way to tell that there is such a work that we are looking forward to bring in an MSR research, that we have some fundamental views of looking at the phenomenon, which could be more common in MSR discourses. So there may be past researches. Of course, this is something that a lot of past researchers, past philosophies, different other philosophies would have worked on it. So this is just a way to demonstrate that such a work is needed.
Okay, next slide. Yeah, the challenges. So maybe at this point, it would be good to have some interaction with all of you about what kinds of challenges you have faced in working with spiritual concepts. So maybe you can take out the slides presentation so that we can see people. Yeah, that would be interesting to have some discussions around the type of challenges that you face or have faced in working on this field of spirituality. Anyone?
Well, you know me, I've always got an opinion about something, so I guess I'll say, I find your category 4, and of course I was at your, your session, and it's really brilliant what you've done. I think it really creates a way of looking at spirituality in a holistic way. And there's another framework. I don't know how many of you have heard about. I've taught out of it because I'm so old, but it's Berlin-Morgan's organizational analysis and organizational analysis and some sociological paradigms. And the basic continuum or ontology and epistemology, and basically their contention is that all methods are included in that framework. And so, you know, one thing about this, and this is not a new conversation, is that, oh, we need new methods, that we can't measure spirituality empirically, and that, you know, it's not knowable through numbers, and I don't disagree with that. But one thing that you bring out in your fourth quadrant about the unexperienceable and unknowable, which are two different things. One's epistemology, the essence of being, the essence of experience, and that's ontology, and then epistemology is the essence of knowing. How do we create knowledge? How do we know things? Those are, you know, the two dimensions. And I would say, from personal experience, that we can experience the unknowable. In other words, I believe, and this is in our work on being-centered leadership. We just published a piece in the Journal of Business Ethics on a framework for leadership, spiritual, and moral development. And it has 5 levels of being, and the highest or the deepest level is the non-dual, or the question mark, or God. And I believe it is possible to have fleeting experiences of God. So I would question the unexperienceable. Now, can we maintain that? Can we lead from that or manage from that? I wouldn't argue that that's probably not very likely. I think the people, gurus, Eckhart Tolle, you know, in the West, you know, they don't manage. They just speak to the experiences. So I don't know if that'll lead to some further conversation. I don't really have a contention, but that is my, you know, in my journey over a few years, that's kind of helped me create the context for what your framework, which I think is really relevant. So I don't know, maybe I'm just rambling and making no sense, but anyway, thought I'd add that.
No, thank you, Jody. It's for us, it was also, how do you present this? Because it's not for buckets. It's kind of, there are so many, you can say it's a continuum also. So what you are talking about, that unexperienceable part, we can have some glimpses of it. So like near-death experiences, you know, or mystical experience, some glimpses of it. But if we go, for example, to some Hindu scriptures, which talks about some concepts which moksha related. I mean, that's Turiya, a concept which is mentioned, and it's beyond our, you can say, normal sensory perception. And in scholarly work, we include that, of course, mainly, you know, those perceptions. And so what we try also to, or at least what I'm trying to do also, is that I acknowledge that that is also there. There are parts which we don't know, and that maybe will be always something. There is always some uncertainty which we don't know. And that gives a kind of an inspiration to always seek for it, seek for the truth, or seek for something. And it is like, if we acknowledge it as a base, as an anchor, which nourishes the other parts, it's so, you can say, one part of the model is in the here and now, where we can look at the reality from our perceptions, and some more deeper aspects of it through our experiences. But there are, of course, things that it's not that easily to bring in that scholarly domain. So that's why it's easy also to park it in such a way that there are intensities of it, And if we rely on mathematics, which is beyond my field, but whatever I have read or noticed, there are also things that has not been defined, like infinity. What is that? And if you go to maybe talk to mathematicians, they would say, we pretend or we assume that this is reality, this is existence, we know it. But so I want to give space still to that aspect, which is in a humble way, which we say that we don't know, because I honestly believe we don't know everything. And of course, based on some of the Hindu scriptures, we get that courage to say that. At the same time, if I use this model, I say that, you know, our work, we can achieve a lot from MSR by saying, if we even shift towards that experiential part, there is so much to gain. As you know, in the scholarly debates, we are too much pushed towards that quantifying, towards that positivistic view. So that itself is a journey or to gain and to develop things. But in the meantime, it was I intended to have an interaction with you, to give you the floor, but it was tempting for me to respond to it. Sorry. Who was there? Yes. Shall I go to Tian?
Yeah, and Raghuji wants to say something too.
Oh,
Yeah, I
okay.
don't know how to.
Please go ahead.
I don't know how to get the right icon. It's going all over the place. So, and at some point of time, no hurry.
Yes. So you wanted to say something, yeah? Please go ahead.
So there are other people who are there. Sharda, I'll go
Yeah, they
later.
were raised hands by Jerry, Tian, and Raja. I see.
Okay. Yeah. Tian, please go ahead.
I think Jerry raised their hands before me.
Okay, Jerry, you go. Go ahead.
Well, I don't mind if, okay. It took me a while to figure out on this new one where the raise hand is and how to lower the hand and all this. Okay. But, well, I just, historically speaking, when we first started MSR, we were at least, we were kind of vague in defining spirituality, and we stayed vague for a while. And then the Academy kind of, in order to become an interest group, they kind of forced us to include religion. So that's how religion got in there. So, but it seems to me, I found it very interesting what you were just talking about, Charter, because looking even more historically than that, it seems to me that the whole academy is kind of based off the model from psychology. And you know, psychology, which was my background, for years was very behavioral oriented. In fact, right now I think they still define it as the science of human behavior. But if you go before then, the origins of psychology were always started off as more introspection.
Exactly.
Like William James and those people, they were really doing a lot of self-reflection, self-analysis, going inside. And it seems to me as we talk, I know this gets more into the next part, which I guess is I get confused on the ontology and the epistemology, but it seems to me what we need to do is really give space for, like you were saying, going inside. Almost all the measurements that have been used have been based on behavioral measurements, Likert scales, and all that stuff, and we haven't seen too much in terms of like internal things, which at least when I first got into psychology, I thought, oh, this will help me deal with myself and my problems. And the next thing that happened was, no, this is a science and we study behavior and we don't at all look at ourselves. And I think when Academy Mandarin got, you know, based on that model, we have a lot of the same thing here, which is too much looking outside ourselves, not enough going inside ourselves. And when I talk about experiences I had, and I know and the last paper I did with Anil, where we talked about our own experiences of transcendence and all that stuff, is very much a personal, internal experience, which is almost very hard to define and hard to put into words. So that's so I think we need to get more more looking at introspection. And the other thing I'd mention is I've been reading a lot of Ken Wilber, and one in his latest book, he defines spiritual intelligence as the importance that, you know, what do we find important, which is another way of looking at it, which I hadn't thought of. So I'll just throw that out. And now I throw it to Tian, who should have gone first anyway.
Thank you. I was trying to respond to the question, what challenges do we face when trying to define concepts in spirituality? So my reflection was when I was trying to establish a theory of Zen-informed feminist leadership model, I had such notions or vaguely defined notions as compassion, wisdom, confidence, equanimity, creativity, enlightenment. So all these concepts are quite vague and it's difficult to define. So instead of trying to define them, I just tell stories. So there's a first person narrative of it's an autoethnographic narrative of what I experienced during my field study at some Zen centers. So I was trying to incorporate all these notions in my storytelling. So that's the way I can find to try to define concepts. So by storytelling or by first person autoethnographic narratives. But I know this can only be effective for the experienceable parts of in the framework that Shadar and Punita presented. For the unexperienceable, unknowable, and unknown part, I don't know what can we do with that. Maybe through poems or metaphors or some holistic scripture, some text in the scripture. So that's the only thing I can imagine for now.
Thank you. It's nice, to bring up metaphors also. Thank you. There was, I think, Raja wanted to say something?
Yes.
And then continue with the slides.
Yes, that's right. I think most of the people have covered what I wanted to say.
Okay.
In the last a few months of my experience of when I discuss spirituality in my field of research, one of the challenges which I face is most of them seem to have a very positivist attitude towards spirituality, and they want to quantify some things. And so that's one. And another approach, another challenge which I see is to be able to prove that someone is spiritual, because it's a very individualistic experience, and the role of the individual in comparison to a rule book or a law to say that someone is spiritual, I think this creates a lot of friction in understanding that. And one more thing which I've noticed is, I've learned from my research, someone said that ethics originate from a spiritual worldview. But when we discuss ethics in the contemporary time, we discuss very normative practices, which says, is someone ethical or not? But the whole value for contextualization and the position of that particular individual in the ethical context is quite undermined. And the last thing is subtle experiences such as how is my breath, how is my ability to digest, how is my ability, what is my response to water. These experiences form a very dense role in our life. However, these experiences, which could also be, which could also constitute to spirituality, and also to the fact that spirituality does not have to do with only to do with going to a temple or associating with a religion, but anything which you do in life can be spiritual, just like any art form, etc. This uniformal acceptance is somehow one. It is difficult for even aspirant to establish what is the right form, and it's also, if you look at it from an academic or from the perspective to accept spirituality, the existence of spirituality, it's a kind of frictionful, I would say. That's all. Thank you.
Good, good, good. Actually, the plan was to go on with to continue, because we want to also discuss the methodology. Can it wait, both of you, please? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So because maybe Puneet, you can explain the methodology that we have been using.
Okay. So far, by following this, chain of thinking, we end up with some definitions. The definition of as a spirituality as a field of knowledge that deals with this unknown and its connectedness with the known. And spirituality, the definition of spirituality is a quality of becoming aware of the connectedness with its unknown. So this this is not a definition per se. This is more of a schema, because we went through the debates that were there around the essentialist view and the existentialist view, various views that whether it should be defined, it should not be defined, it's measurable or not measurable. And so there are a lot of debates, and these type of debates have a pattern, and these patterns are not unique to spirituality, but there are also other concepts. In fact, there is a lot of debate about the nature of mind itself. So there are a lot of debates which have a similar pattern. So what we thought that, okay, there are debates, but how to move forward, what to make sense of this? Because in management, we are also concerned with some kind of a pragmatic approach in research as well as practice. So how do we handle that? So we came up with this integrative approach where we will, instead of designing definitions, we will design schemas. And schemas can be elaborated using one's own worldview or one's own approaches, and made a thick definition which can have very much context-specific words. So the schemas will help at least to have a conversation among ourselves, so that we belong to a same discipline, so that we belong to a certain research group or so. And it helps, in our collaboration, in our research, as well as funding, seeking joint projects and things. So that's how we propose something like a schema. And I will just take a minute to actually, what do I mean by schema? So I'm taking, past research on schemas, that, what does, so schemas is Bartlett in a book I read somewhere, it's something that you draw, the next time that you draw that, it's similar, but is not same. It's never the same. So, but that it was something similar. So that notion, that feeling, is what captures schema, what you have in your head. So we are using this concept as definition schema. So it will have placeholders. By the way, the schema concept have been quite taken to its extremes in the fields of technology, fields of hard sciences, where they use system thinking to actually use schema to conceptualize various kinds of systems. And when they are building interfaces among various systems, they use this a lot in computer science, information science, but they take it to a very much extreme. The one danger to do that is that follow that route could actually silently bring the essentialist stance. And that is a caveat that we deal with schemas here. And that's why I'm saying the schemas are not definitions. That is the thing that will take time to actually, really argue well or express well. It's just the beginning that we did in last 5 years. We published this type of research with definition of leadership, definition of intelligence, definition of spirituality, definition of spiritual care. So as a schema. So in this approach, we are using certain indigenous philosophies, and we come from Hindu indigenous philosophies. So there, Nyaya and Vaisheshika, these are two philosophies which provide extensive information on how do you define terms. And so there are many methodologies inside Nyaya and Vaisheshika. The one that is most, the entry level is Tarka method, which consists of three phases. One is Uddesha, where you collect all the things that constitute that thing. And Lakshana, when you collect all of these qualities or attributes or things around that things, then you'll try to argue on which are the ones which are differential, which uniquely make up that concept. And in the third, by 1 and 2, we get a schema that this is this. For example, a table can have 4 legs and maybe a top. And let's say a top and 4 legs constitute differential properties of a table. In the third stage, we validate this using 3 tests. I will quickly cover this 2 tests. By the way, this comes from our paper where we did the definition on spirituality. So we went through 142 definitions of spirituality, and we went through figuring out the Uddesha. So Uddesha is about, we are figuring out genus. For example, apple is a fruit. Maybe, a potato is a vegetable. So spirituality is what? Can be classified under what? Or spirituality as a discipline, is it a discipline? Is it a field of knowledge? What is it? So field of knowledge, discipline, these words, they are examples of genus. Just like fruits, vegetables, these are examples of genus. So first step is, what is the genus? Is it a force? Is it is there something beyond or something? Is it a quality? Is it a competence? Is it a skill? Is it something? So that arguments that we. In the second step, we went through the differentia part of it. That what is so uniquely, what is the unique thing coming out of it? So that we found that connectedness was the unique thing, but connectedness with what? So in the Asian traditions or the Eastern traditions, it was connectedness with the one's existence beyond, through, of course, the existence which is perceived. In the other traditions also, it sees as interconnectedness as one of the main differential attribute that which was there in spirituality. So we brought in that connectedness and the existence. And then that's how we arrived at this definition. Spirituality is any entity's quality of becoming aware of the connectedness with its existence beyond perceived existence. Here the genus is entity's quality. So quality is the genus we are taking, and the differential attribute is connectedness with its existence beyond perceived existence. So rest of the 2 bold terms, they are differential attributes, and the first one is the genus. So in the third step, we will now argue with this definition whether it passes the 3 inconsistency tests. What are these 3 inconsistency tests? The first test is avyapti dosha. That means that if is this attribute there with all the members of spirituality category? Are we missing on certain spiritual view where this definition can be challenged or does not exist, where there is no connectedness or where there is no existence beyond perceived existence? So if that is the case, then this definition fails this first test. For example, if a cow is there which is white, and we say that cow is always white in definition, and you find a black cow, that means that white as a characteristic cannot come in the member in the category cow. So in the definition, so it is that example. Second, the ativyapti dosha, that's something that occurs outside also. That spirituality, whatever we are attributing to spirituality, there's another term outside which has the same attributes. So then also this definition is challenged. For example, if I say that any 4-legged animal is cow. So 4-legged animal can be a goat, can be a pig, can be a lion. So that means four-leggedness cannot be the attribute, cannot be the defining attribute in a schema of a cow. So this is second type of test. Third type of test is that it is not possible. So that is that if there is something which is there, which has been said that, oh, this is not possible. But if we are defining it on that basis, for example, if I say that cow has 100 legs, which is an impossibility. So if I am using that in the definition, so in this case, it is not applicable. So I'm not referring to that. So this is it from my side. So Shadaji, I know I rushed into things because I am also mindful of the time, because this is the same approach that we suggest that you take in your groups, or you have some other approaches also. Those are most welcome, and we will get enriched. So Shadaji, please.
Thank you. So we thought of the topic for today. We can look into the spiritual care, the concept of spiritual care. And maybe it would be good before we go to the breakouts, because before the breakouts, we will take some time also to arrange the breakouts. We will have a few minutes of just break. But whatever comes to your mind, if you think of spiritual care as a concept, and someone asks you to define it, make a schema or just a definition, what comes up? Take 2 minutes, and whatever you have, you can put it in the chat. If you want to discuss it, mention it to us, it's also fine. Because spirituality, what we notice is, especially with the youth, there are some research done looking at, okay, what about religiousness? What about spirituality? Maybe it's in some groups, like we see in the youth, it's sometimes for them easier to say, I'm spiritual, I'm not religious. It's kind of, somehow people have ideas of what is the quality then, what is it to be spiritual. It's more easy for them to connect to. So spiritual care has become one of our research fields in the past few years. Since we are in my case, I'm working for a business university as well as the Faculty of Religion and Theology. And in the context of religion and theology, we have a program, spiritual care, which people learn, where they learn techniques, but also connect to scriptures, which is dealing with existential questions. And these existential questions can pop up among people in prisons, if they come in a defense, in a military context, or in palliative care, end-of-life care, all these contexts. So spiritual care is one of our research topics, and we believe that it is more of a maybe a clinical topic, clinical related. But if we see the increase of in interest in well-being, health, spiritual health, these kind of topics, that it could be something which can be embraced very easily in the business context, in the organizational context, like spiritual care for business can be some of the things we can build up, which can become our, can say, one of our unique products in the division of MSR. I mean, that's one of them that's popping up. Okay, good. I think there are some already mentioning it. Some of the messages are there. Anyone who wants to explain, just if you can take out the slide, then I can see again the people.
Although I have typed in the chat, but I would like to highlight this, that this comes quite often in our discussions, that religion and spirituality, and we are taking a stance that religion has been amply defined by other disciplines also properly and quite extensively, and the schema of spirituality has to be defined in such a way that it takes into account the similarities, differences, overlaps, and exact overlaps from the concept of religion, because some people define religion as totally different than spirituality. Some say that it's similar. Some say that it has an overlap, that there is an outside part and the inside part. Some say it's the same. Religion is a spirituality. So our schema should be able to hold these four types of views in order to have it as part of a discipline. We can have variants of it, variants of thick definition of spirituality, which can address the nuances of all four of this. But at a schema level, it should be able to do justice with these four approaches, four parts.
Good, good. So shall we take a few minutes of break? Just 3 minutes break, and we can get back. In the meantime, we can make the breakout sessions. Okay.
Shadaji, how many breakout rooms would be sufficient? I think 2 or 3. 3 breakout rooms.
3 would be good, I think, because then otherwise 2 will be then not much time for people to have interactions, maybe.
Okay, and just randomly.
Yeah, why not? Then each of us can be in one of them. Like you can be one, I think Ramya and I. Yes. We are still in a break. I have to be very much aware of the time.
Sharda,
Yeah.
I might have to drop out at this point. Yeah, I'm still recovering from a cataract operation.
Yes.
Right. And I'm
Yes.
finding, difficult. My eyes are.
Yes. I was amazed seeing you. I thought.
So I'll get.
Raghuji, why don't you share your thoughts on this before you leave?
Okay, couple of things, Anil. One is I'm still, in my mind, I'm still thinking about 2 things. One is that the entire literature and the practice of spirituality, or whatever you call it, in the yogic tradition is full of verbs. It has no nouns. Yeah, the word yoga itself is a verb. So how does one translate it at all into language, especially when the English language is full of nouns? No? I've had this difficulty all the time when I'm explaining things, everything. I continue to struggle with it. I don't know how to cross this. And I know that it has caused a lot of misunderstanding. Yeah. Simple example, I was just finishing a class. Took me a long time to say ahankara is not ego. Ego is a noun and ahankara is a verb. Yeah, it's an activity. It's a process by which I'm created out of all of Prakriti. So there are things like this that I was wondering. The other thing who struck me when I was listening to you people is the word logos that keeps on coming, no? Yeah, ontology and epistemology and all that. And in my understanding, if I look at the spiritual process, there is logos, which is at the surface, which in yogic terms would be called the vishesha, the distinctive level of reality. And then there is eros and pathos, which are completely feeling based and which generate a whole way of interacting with the world. And then there is mythos, which is even deeper, which is at a more archetypal level. Now, how does this get translated? Because a lot of the practice is to go through the eros and the pathos of life, go past the mythos into something that Shardaji calls as unexperienceable, unknowable, and so on. So these were the two things that kept coming, when Puneet was talking about the various ways of working on a schema and all of that. And this is something I'm finding a little difficult to relate.
Mhm.
Because in my I'm not an academic researcher, right? So I have this problem anyway. I'm only talking about action research and discovery
Yeah.
process,
Yeah.
and it's all a process. So how does that get translated?
Yeah. Right.
That was my question, and
Yeah. Because
Can I ask a counter question?
Mhm.
Raghuji, so let's say you do all the teaching to the CEOs and all the people, right, around the Vedic way of doing things, Indic way. Do they ask about how do you define this, like some of these deep concepts, and how do you answer?
I skipped that question, Anil. What I do, really, I tell them, let's practice and give them practices and help them, like Jerry was saying, I help them to introspect,
Mhm.
right? And it's a strange thing, in psychology, the first person who called himself a psychologist was William Wundt.
Mhm.
And when the positivist movement came, he was thrown out. He said, what is this self you're talking about? It can't be measured. And we're back to that issue, because I don't define. Because if I try to define, it gets into an intellectual process. So I'm just telling them, practice this, practice this, practice this. At some point of time, I've had people coming up and saying, oh, you're talking about Vishnu. Okay, I'm talking about Vishnu, right? So I leave it at that, because this process does not help really introspecting and going inward.
Mhm.
Yeah. In fact, going inward, even in the yogic thing, is to have pratyaksha in what is happening, exactly see what is happening without any qualifiers, without any definitions, nothing, just actually see what the process of the mind is all about.
Mhm.
And
Good.
in yoga, that seeing is what makes all the difference, nothing else. There is no doing at all. That seeing is the doing.
Mhm.
So they're all verbs, see? So,
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
that was where I was getting stuck.
Yeah. Yeah, see, if we do teaching in my classes, this is a spirituality. It's people are not waiting for definitions. They want to move on, and practices. It's full of practices. So the purpose, of course, is if we talk about practices, we don't even have to do it in a university context. We don't even need a division. We have all kinds of practices in different indigenous contexts. The thing is, if we bring in a division in a scholarly context, then you need to have some kind of common ground to have the discussion going on. So that's the purpose of why we have to start at least to define to what is it that we are doing. What is the field of religious studies? Where is spirituality coming in? If it's the same, why do we need to have two different things? If it's not the same, what is it then which is different? And that's the character of knowledge dissemination, knowledge discussions about it in a university context, because we are talking about, of course, building that spiritual that field of knowledge, field of knowing. And logos, pathos, egos, it's all different ways of, you can say, also expressing what someone feels. And we know that there are people, at least I have noticed in many past 15 years, that some even of my immediate colleagues would say that, it's such a vague thing. Why should we talk about spirituality? It's such a vague. We don't need to bring it to a scholarly debate. So there are people who are looking for connecting to spirituality, or which some of the people would say it's innate need of people, and they need concepts. They need to conceptualize in order to move on. So, and maybe that's the majority of people in the field of scholarly discussions. So there is also a duty to start with that. And that's why incorporating also the other parts is important in that continuum that we have made. Thank you, Raghu and
Sorry, I
Shivratri.
have to rush off. I'm
Okay,
getting it.
I see Tom's hand raised.
yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what was already said in terms of practice. And I think the conundrum or the paradox we're dealing with here is you're trying to shoehorn spirituality into a conceptual framework where you're trying to talk to people who have never practiced, who don't understand this. And even if they understand the terms that you're presenting, they won't understand it until they practice. It's still conceptual. And this is the emphasis of all universities is theory first, and then reality second. And I know what we're trying to do here. We're trying to convince the Academy of Management that we're a legitimate field. But our legitimacy comes from practice, not concepts. So this is the conundrum we're facing. And, there's an old conversation in Christianity. People got tired of arguing about the number of angels on the head of a pin. And that's a conversation about concepts, not practice, not experience. So I don't know, I'm just trying to bring, just trying to point out,
Yeah.
we who think spirituality is really important in our lives are trying to shoehorn that experience into a conceptual framework that is, okay, I guess I understand why we're doing it. I've been an advocate for this, but at the same time, it's problematic. That's all I'm trying to say. And I don't know how in my class, I know I can talk concepts till I'm blue in the face and I get blank faces until the students practice. And then there's a aha moment. I got what you're talking about.
Of course.
So I think this is really important for us to understand and recognize here. I don't know what else to say about it, but
yeah.
I just think it's important that the two are really different worlds. One is probably left hemisphere consciousness, conceptual things representing reality with concepts. And the other is right hemisphere consciousness, which is lived experience. Anyway, I'll leave it. I'll leave my comments there.
It's wonderful. This is just the essence that we are trying to do with both the worlds. If we say it's about connecting, the perceived existence and the non-perceived, so that acknowledging that one is there. So it's acknowledging. So it's in our model, at least we are not trying to think of it should be from left to right. Some people may just start in the middle with the experience and be there and stay there. Some people would need that experience to be brought back and clarified. So not in this paper, but in another paper, we have given position to different people, like spiritual gurus. They may be in that right side of that continuum. Innovators, entrepreneurs, they may have so many types of images or thinking processes about creating something. What they do is maybe very spiritually, they start. The moment they bring into the world, it needs to be conceptualized. It needs to be put into a product. So it is a continuum. And some people will be more in the right, some people will be more there. But it's kind of an ongoing process of life.
Even my personal experience is exactly what you have an experience, you read about it, it means something to you. You have another experience, it kind of a process of going back and forth between these two ways of being as a person. So I'm not denying it. I'm just saying it's a struggle. And I even find myself getting tired of listening to the concepts, to be honest. And I know I'm in this field and I'm interested in this field.
Yeah.
But it just, and I can see where mathematicians, well, maybe mathematicians might be spiritual. They might have intuitive insights that go beyond pure concepts. But anyway, I'm just putting it there.
Nice.
The struggle. And maybe we need to acknowledge this. Maybe in our conceptual framework and describing our conceptual framework, we need to talk about the necessity to be able to move back and forth between conceptual and experience. Maybe that's something we need to add to this. Because if you don't do that and you sit there in conceptual and arguing about the number of, angels on the pin of a head of a pin, you're in the wrong place. And that tends to what happens in academia.
Exactly.
So I think, somewhere in here, we need to say our framework has to include experiential knowledge and the need to shift the benefit of moving from one to the other as a way of developing our spiritual practice.
Exactly.
That's a concept that's, I think, maybe really important to articulate.
Yeah, this is what we have created in one of our recent papers, which will come out, where we say that, this is a continuous process of, growing. Like in academia, you can say we start with, as Puneet says, it's always naming, knowing, realizing. That's a process. And spirituality is, you can't say everyone starts with realizing. Some curiosity comes somewhere from listening or something, but it will be more, how do you say, satisfying if it's realized. And some people, while realizing, what do the gurus do actually? If they give their lectures, they may have realized a lot of bliss or whatever, but then they start to think about, contemplate, and to know it, and then they give it a name. Then they come with the lectures and, develop a spiritual technique and all. So that's their movement is from the right side to the left. And some people have to start from the left and to the right. Some people will be in the middle. So this is what we try to explain in one of the recent papers as well. Yes. Joan, and then we have to quickly move to the breakout.
I'm going to be very brief about it. I see the points of both you and Tom, and I don't see that there is a discrepancy necessarily in the points, but indeed we need to have, in order to legitimize our being as an entity, as a division, I think we need both. We need the practical application of what we stand for, as well as the theoretical foundation to prove that there is more to it, because I know that for the longest time, MSR was kind of not belittled, but taken with a grain of salt because they felt that there's not enough theories to support what we are standing for. So that is the reason why I see the merit of what we're doing. At the same time, it's critical, and coming from the business perspective, from the business side of it, I see how important it is to also come with legitimate evidence of the usefulness of what we're doing. And that was what I wanted to say. So I say, I like this conversation and I see the merit.
Thank you. Thank you. If we talk about building a discipline, we don't deny the practical aspects. As we said, that is just something which quickly I want to say. We mentioned there should be some discussion about the ontology, the ways of knowing the epistemological part, what is right knowledge, what is not right, or the ethical aspects, the axiology, and praxeology is, the abundance of discussions that we are having usually practices and all, it falls into that. So we talk about a discipline, there is space actually, and that's why we mention it as, or label it as, an integrative approach. So it's not either or, it's kind of the attempt to give place to all of this, all of the different viewpoints in that sense. Then let us continue with the breakout. And since it's only 35 minutes left, I would say let's have a breakout, 3 breakouts groups, and Puneet is going to assign people in the breakouts. And what we need to do is to think about conceptualizing spiritual care, or if you feel like there is another topic, spiritual concept that you are working on, which you want to discuss with this content that we have given, please go ahead. And after 20 minutes, we will come back.
Oh, I thought everybody was supposed to leave. We were the first ones to leave and come
Yeah,
back.
we're still here. What the?
We're still here. Now we're in the main group.
Is this the larger group now? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I
we're in the
don't know.
larger group. Now we have to
Oh,
admit
okay.
also.
Yeah.
Back, yeah.
You know, but he
So
made a very good point, because look at all these, you look at some of the gurus and they all, the guru may have done very nice things, but they also, were not exactly celibate, or look at Osho, or look at any of these guys. I mean,
no,
so
there
that's
is a separate thing of good and bad in every role. You can good and bad teacher,
well,
good and bad
well,
researcher, good and bad
yeah,
mother, good and
that's true. But the
yeah.
issue of what's religious versus what's spiritual, every example that was given ended up being, at least when you said for Roma, it ended up being religious.
But
So if we look
guru
at
is not
spiritual,
religious. Guru is generally not considered religious, from what I think.
well, I mean, that's it. If you say religious, if you say spiritual care would be looking after the person's spirit, then you have to say, okay, well, what does that mean? What's the person's spirit?
Yeah. So a lot of in the Indian context, we don't say the spirit per se, but like the whole consciousness, the existence, the life.
Or looking
So
at the
that word
consciousness.
spirit,
Yeah, so,
the spirit is very much a Western kind of word. I don't
yeah.
like it too much, but I'm not going to say it. I prefer the word chitta or consciousness, which is the being, the totality.
Roger, you raised your hand. Why?
Yeah, Raja, go ahead.
Yes, what you were saying, Jerry, reminded me of what is usually said in Hindu philosophies, or for me, it was Swami Vivekananda who said that you do not believe if you're even your own teacher. You should have the experience of what is called spiritual or metaphysical of the truth. You should find the truth yourself. Your teacher could be the best guru of the world, but his story is his story. You have to write your own story.
In fact, exactly. The guru is only the one who wakes you up to your total reality. Guru can show where to go, but guru will not walk for you. They'll show you how to go this way path and find your own thing and realize your own self as the unbounded self, as the guru has realized. That's why the guru shishya parampara comes, because mostly we
So
don't
it'd be
even
like
realize that
the guru would be like your spiritual life coach.
yes, that's the term you can say.
Life coach. Something
Consciousness coach. In our university, we're creating this on a consciousness coaches, which is kind of.
Yeah. But now imagine this in a management if this is management, spirituality, and religion, and we're looking from a management perspective, we really need to get beyond just looking at, okay, well, because I already see it going to be translated into how do I look after my employees' needs? Does my does my manager like me? Does my manager give me, I mean, and that's not really getting at anything really particularly spiritual.
But all the doubts that are gnawing at somebody's heart or spirit, that if somebody can get away the doubts, that don't worry, it's all normal. Your interpretation is very narrow that the person needs harm. Maybe the person was stressed and therefore they said something. So in other words, that's the broadening the context, so you don't get too narrow into a beating down yourself. That can be
or maybe providing opportunities for transcendence.
Yeah, opportunities for transcendence. To me,
like
that
every day
becomes
you have a meditation or
yeah.
some mindfulness sessions or something.
Yeah.
something.
Bringing you back to the expanded self or sense of self, right? Life being the pure life that you are, beyond the roles that you play. I think that would be a idea of MSR, right? And we have different roles, but we are more than the role. And
yeah. So what happened to everybody else? Did they get?
There's
like 9 minutes left.
We're the only ones left. What happened to the rest of the groups?
I can ask.
Are
they are in their own breakout rooms.
There was a message there that please come back to the big room. Remember, Sada, it flashed for us.
I didn't. You're the only one who saw it. I don't know, but I'm just saying, there's only 9 minutes left.
We have our own breakout room here, except now it's being recorded. When we were in the breakout room, our conversation was done.
Now we have an option.
Now we are recorded.
Puneet's here. Wait a minute.
Puneet, so this is the second.
Okay. Yeah, we can just check with Puneet. Let me.
Yeah, that's okay. So,
well, Puneet is here. He's got his.
Yeah, Puneet has joined in two different ways. One is this, one is the other one.
I don't know.
MSR
I'm just
training.
saying there's only
Oh,
5
he's saying
minutes left
last
to
2
the whole
minutes.
thing.
Oh, he said last 2 minutes. Maybe he gave a 5-minute notice or something like that, and then I just thought join in soon.
Oh, okay.
Do that.
That would leave about 5 minutes for
Oh, the
Sharda to
question
finish
becomes
the whole thing.
how often do you need spiritual care? In practical sense, not that theoretically. How often do you personally
How often do you need?
Yeah, once a year, once in 6 months, once in a month, every day.
Every day.
Depends what you mean by
Every
spiritual
day.
care.
Every day.
Yeah, you
Every
should
day.
have it every day, not, you know.
I'm in the turmoil right now.
We are in the
Okay,
same
good.
boat.
Every day. Okay. Who else does? What frequency do you need spiritual care? Let's hear.
Everybody needs spiritual care.
Every
And
day?
they go about it in different ways. So some people have spiritual care listening to music. Some people have spiritual care by with their pets. I mean, there's a lot of different ways. If spiritual care is caring for the spirit within, that could be all kinds of things. Then
just
maybe
like
you could take that as to how do you apply that for like in a work setting, what can you provide for people that nurtures their spirit?
Yeah. So that means if everybody agrees, I think you need every day and through various modalities, just like we need food care, right? You need to eat every day.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes,
same way
exactly.
you need to shower every day, you know, sort of thing. So you need to do it, but you can't be always going to professionals. Like you cook at home every day. You only go to restaurants only like once a week, once a month, whatever that duration is. Same way,
Yeah.
you sort of do the self-care or spiritual care through whatever mechanism every day. And then you go to the Sunday school or Sunday temple, right? And then begin to sort of have their sort of a sermon or something like that and ask questions. So spiritual care has the sort of daily thing, self spiritual care, and also the professional spiritual care. What do you say?
Yeah,
I
I thought.
was just thinking of that. There's that TV show
Ramya saying
where
something.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think spiritual care is just one example that we were supposed to use as a possible crutch to try and understand what is the issue with respect to ontology, right? For MSR, how do we how do we arrive at what is the nature of that reality of that concept that we are trying to deal with? Should you put it into shoehorn it into a concept or not, right? And how much of it is the experiential and how much of it is the conceptual, and possibly that's I mean, maybe using this whatever we debated so much on spiritual care, we can try to reflect about that for MSR.
They just put a definition into the
what is
chat.
Puneet?
Let's see.
It's the nurturing.
Spiritual care is what are these?
This is what cohesion. The intention nurturing of inner being, engaging thoughts, blah blah blah, is the practice of nurturing.
Collaborative
Is
practice.
a collaborative practice nurturing in life. Where all this kind of spiritual case, and these are probably the members of their group who wrote them, right?
This is our group. We discussed 4 or 5 definitions and we arrived at something, still not consensus, of course, but there was something missing, but the time was up. So the last message is what we arrived at finally. And so
there's like 6 things on there. Are these all these are all from the same group?
Yeah,
I think
those are from the
yes, same group.
It's now the plenary. Yeah, some people had to leave, so that always happens.
Who needs a hard driver? Let me tell you.
Sorry?
Nothing. I'm just joking. Puneet got us to write out 4 or 5 different definitions of.
Puneet is a hard taskmaster. He's not a spiritual care guy.
Taskmaster, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Shall we? The first group. You want to say something? I think I was in the first group. Want to say we don't have that much time, but if every
quick, 1 minute, everybody.
Maybe the first group, maybe the format could be that you tell about the genus and some of the qualities that you talked about. If you have arrived at the final definition, then you can share that also.
Talk about the genius, you said? Oh, genus. I thought you said genius.
Like
genus.
Apple
Okay,
is a fruit. So fruit is a genus. So
okay.
spiritual care is what?
Yeah, which one's the first group?
It was Joan, Manny, who else? Jody had to leave.
Okay.
Vaishnavi was there. Ashish was there.
Okay.
Any inputs from you?
Well, we had a really good conversation, and we spoke about the importance of basically understanding spirituality in order to be able to apply its care. And we went all around the world, basically. We talked about the inner experience, we talked about the intermediate experience, the external experience, and we brought in some terms pertaining to interconnectedness and what more, Mani, Vaishnavi, and Ashish, do you have anything else to add?
The words, the keywords that you had.
Okay, let's, we have only 2 minutes, maybe we can move to
Yes,
the next one.
Vaishnavi, quickly.
I had some keywords. Those were awareness that leads to self-healing. So spiritual care, it's a healing concept, and connectedness, self-care, and self-transcendence.
Okay, thank you. Moving to the second group, please. Who were in the second group?
I
Quickly.
can give a quick, since I was the notes taker in that group. So on the ontology part, there was discussions about the nature of soul and the connection of with the soul and caring for the soul. So the challenge was that what is the nature of soul, and different philosophies see soul as different. So that has to be accommodated in the schema. Second, the different range of practices, meditation, listening, silence. So they are to be accommodated. Then the role of caregiver. So caregiver is an egoistic stance of something to be given. So, but the industry recognizes that as caregiver. So that fact of equality, equanimity, connectedness, or role as a mentor, guide, philosopher, etc., that has to be kind of accommodated in that placeholder. So that humility has to be there in the definition. Then challenges of non-dual and duality, and challenges of teachability of this spiritual care, practicability, institutional policy making, and something which Melrose said, uh, transitions, helping someone transition from one state to the other is something that has to be expressly mentioned in the definition. So after that, we came up with this definition. Spiritual care is the intentional practice. So intentional practice is the genus. Spiritual care is the intentional practice of nurturing inner life. We use the word inner life to avoid discussions on what is the nature of soul. So inner life could constitute soul, regardless of whether it's Eastern tradition, Western tradition, or whatever. So spiritual care is the intentional practice of nurturing inner life, fostering connection, and supporting transitions to promote resilience, holistic well-being, and social cohesion. So resilience, holistic well-being, they were individual level outcomes, and social cohesion was the social level outcomes that spiritual caregiver can, if we have to market this concept to the world in policy making, in individuals and communities. So this is what we. I hope my group members have I summarized it well.
Has been wonderful. The third group, quickly.
Okay, Ramya, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, we had quite a comprehensive slicing and dicing of spiritual care, ranging from what is the doing of spiritual care to the being of spiritual care to the levels of spiritual care and the many meanings that spiritual care could hold. And we had lots of questions coming in from various angles to it, so that we could get a very comprehensive notion of it. So we came rather than putting a English text definition, I think all of us really ended up giving spiritual care to each other and experiencing that feeling of spiritual care in our group. And we said that, okay, maybe it's just about the being and the existence. What can I offer my existence to you, wholly? That was one of the views, and also to be there with someone and to be able to care for them. Of course, we had many other interesting questions as well as to who is a professional spiritual caregiver and what are the attributes of spiritual caregiver, who is a guru, what kind of spiritual care does a guru give, a guru or a teacher, or is it, or a coach or a spiritual coach. We had many very interesting ideas around this concept, which gave it a very well-rounded notion that we got about spiritual care.
Good, wonderful. I think I heard so many similarities. We had a spiritual companionship and all of this. Well, guys, it's already time to leave. It was wonderful to be with all of you from different places, and I hope we can continue because this was just first one in the series, and let's try it out and see
Shada,
how
your camera is off.
Oh, how come? Anyway, I love this session. I hope it was inspiring for everyone, and let's continue with this series and enrich each other. If you want to reach out to us for this methodology that we are using, whether we can enhance it, welcome. If you want to work on the field of spirituality in specifically spiritual care, reach out to us because we are building up a group, a research group. And what else? What else? That's it from my side. Thank you all, and
Thank
see
you
you
all.
soon.
See you soon. I'll stop
Thank
the
you.
recording.
Namaste.